Welcome back, everyone, to the Moms Like Me podcast, powered by Support Now. I am a huge believer that good people know good people. And so when I was introduced to Danielle Ireland, our guest today, from a good friend, Ashlyn Thompson, I knew we would hit it off right away. I had the privilege of being on Danielle's podcast, which we'll talk about in a moment, last week. And I'm so excited to bring Danielle and her mindset, her outlook to our podcast. And my goal, if there are always several on this podcast, but if there's one goal of this conversation, is that we as moms feel more inspired to think differently and to think, frankly, more grand about our lives. And as you'll notice in the conversation we'll have today with Danielle, she is the master of and not or. And I think she really is a great kind of guiding light to moms everywhere, that you don't have to be put in a box. So with that very grandiose but accurate description, Danielle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take that intro and just like before I step into any new environment, I'll listen to it so I can feel a little confidence boost. Thank you. That's so
You,
kind.
of course. So
Yeah.
part of what I told this to Danielle in the intro here before we started recording, Danielle lives life very abundantly, and it's a quality that I admire, and I think it's something that a lot of people strive for, but we sometimes limit ourselves. And so without taking too much away from your accomplishments, Danielle, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. You have so many things that you're proud of. Kind of talk us through all these different hats you play in your life, and then we'll kind of delve into how and why you got to those different hats.
Thank you. Okay, sure. So I would say, let me think first. So the things I'm most proud of and the different hats I wear, I am really proud and probably most proud, I would probably say that I'm most proud of the relationship I've cultivated with myself because it's something that was very intentional that I put a lot of time and energy into. From there, what I know is that I can't give anything in my life that matters to me, a relationship, role, a career. I can't show up and offer what I don't have access to. And so I think it's so lovely that you've kind of associated me with abundance because I don't know if that's the language I would have used, but I think it's appropriate. I definitely think it's accurate through therapy and reading and investing greatly in the self-help section in Barnes and Noble for the last 20 years. I turned 40 this past year, so saying 20 years, it sounds so long. I'm like, dang, 20 years ago though, that's I was 20. So it was a long, circuitous road. And I think what I also am proud of is I no longer feel identified by something that I do or something that I accomplish because that was what my 20s and 30s were. I was looking for a career to make me feel fulfilled. And then I was looking for a relationship to make me feel seen. And then it took and is still taking a series of once I hit the thing I think I'm going to hit to feel the way I want to feel, and I still feel empty or I still feel scared or I still feel anxious. It's taken me 100 or 1,000 different ways to realize, oh, that's not where I'm going to find what I'm looking for. That's
And
going to be somewhere else in me. And the more I've loosened my grip on the need to be defined by a role or an accomplishment, the more fulfilling the process of making things has become. And I mean that quite literally, with making my babies, to making a marriage that I'm really proud of, to doing the work that I do professionally. So I work as a therapist and I also am an author. I've self-published a guided journal called Treasured. It's a tool that I really love. I think everyone should journal, whether it's that journal or something else. I've also written a children's book and published that this year called Wrestling a Walrus for little people with big feelings. And I also have a podcast that I'm incredibly proud of and breathing new life into called Don't Cut Your Own Bangs. And so like those are different things that I do, but my relationship with them has grown and changed. But that's because the relationship with myself has changed.
Yeah. Danielle, also one of the things that stood out to me when I was learning about you, and I'm curious if this plays a foundational role in what you phrase as need to be desired. You're
Mm.
also a ballroom dancer and now a ballroom dancer instructor. And when I hear that, I do think of someone that needs to perform. There's a certain expectation. There's a certain quality that people are looking for. Would you say that those early kind of that early expectation as a dancer kind of led you to this perfectionist mentality, or believing or thinking that you need to be a certain way in order to unlock or achieve happiness, satisfaction, value, etc.?
Yes, and all of those things. I was a perfectionist long before I became a dancer. I just don't think I recognized what that was. But what I love when referencing perfectionism, I love to highlight a concept I got from Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, that perfectionism is just an haute couture version of shame. It's just a more dressed up, more like that sounds really catchy in an interview to say that, yeah, I'm hardest on myself and I'm a perfectionist. But what drives that is shame and the feeling that you're not enough. And so, therefore, the need to construct a external sense of self or a highlight reel or a perfectly made up face. It's a way to avoid rejection and avoid being seen. So I started doing commercial acting when I was 13 years old. And I just didn't I'm an only child, so I really was comfortable around adults. A lot of the relationships that I had growing up were with other adults, and so there was something about being on a set where my need to please, my need to perform, and being comfortable in an adult environment, it was like that was my team sport. I wasn't a kid who really was into team sports or athletics, but being on a set, I knew what my role was, I knew how to execute. I knew how to not get in the way and not ruffle feathers. And so it was like all of my emotional training from childhood just made me really, it worked for me on a set. And then I thought I was going to move to LA and be an actor. That's what I went, my undergraduate degree was for. And so, but I had massive culture shock when I moved. And so that was really my first hard look at all of the inadequacies that I wasn't even aware existed. And I came home with a degree, thankfully no debt, with my tail tucked between my legs and didn't know what I wanted to do. And that's when ballroom dancing found me, or rather, I found it. And so I became a ballroom dance instructor, and it, for about 7 years, ticked all the boxes I needed to, again, not look at myself. I got to perform. It wasn't a desk job. My degree didn't feel like a waste. It was also really fun and sexy to say when you would go out and be like, oh, yeah, I'm a ballroom dance instructor. It fed the ego. And it was a really convenient place to hide in plain sight because I
What?
still didn't know who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. I had no direction, but I could, do a shuffle ball change and, dance the cha-cha, and it would be really exciting. But then I met my husband, and it was in the process of falling in love with him that it just became apparent of how many gaps there really were, because I I made him the center of myself, which is not healthy. That's not a healthy place for him or me. And so our relationship ended at the end of that first year. And so it was as a result of loving him, being loved by him, and then that breakup that I was, I think, 26. I think I was 26. That was the first time that I would honestly say I took a hard look at who do you want to be? How do you want to be? And I would say that my relationship with myself and journaling and just, I guess, authenticity, I was like, oh, nobody can do this for me. And so little by little by little by little, I would search for a job, search for a role identity. I thought I would work in fashion. I thought I would work in skincare. I thought I would work in the spa industry. And so I job hopped because I was looking for an identity that would feel like home. And none of them felt right. And so it was a process of trying something and failing and trying something and failing. Like I was failing forward. And I don't look at failure as a flaw either. It's brave to put yourself out there. When I got really comfortable making an ass of myself on stage because you do. You try things, you fail, you try things and you make mistakes on purpose. And so I got really comfortable with my own discomfort. And it was a process. I realized like, oh, this is what my body does every time I face a challenge and I'm scared. My stage fright feels the same with my anxiety, with anything where I'm vulnerable. There's an actual like step process that my body goes through. And I just got more and more resilient, I'll say, facing that and acknowledging, oh, when I'm about to step up and do anything important, this is usually the feeling that comes first, which tells me there's something to pay attention to. And ultimately, that led me, after I got married, to get to the place of, oh, I think I want to go back to school. And then I was absolutely terrified of that. I was like, I'm going to be a 28-year-old college student. And I didn't even have all the credits I needed to apply to become a therapist. Like, I had to do a whole semester of credits because my art degree didn't fulfill the science requirements. So I had to go back
Yeah.
to school for a whole semester, pay money to do this, not knowing I would even get accepted. And I was absolutely terrified to apply because what if I didn't get accepted? And so the more scared I got, the more important I realized it was to me.
And so, Danielle, so those experiences that you talked about failing forward and the recognition that you had when you first started dating your now husband,
Mhm.
was that the moment that you realized that other people experience this and therefore you wanted to pursue a degree in social work? Like, help me like map the A to B moment of like, oh, if I'm feeling this, other people might be feeling this, and therefore I want to try to be a light or support system for others.
Yes. So when I looked back at what did I like about all of the different things I tried? What motivated the decision? And I listed it out. I'm an external processor in a lot of ways. So I would talk to a couple of people. My husband was one, an old college professor was another. I needed people who would give me honest advice and make me think and not try to comfort me because that is, I think, what I wanted was to be challenged, but not. There's a fine line for me with mentorship or guidance when I'm in the stage of decision making I was in at the time. I didn't want someone to ask me questions I couldn't answer. Well, how is that going to work? How are you going to,
Mhm.
I don't know how to answer that yet. So don't put that pressure on me. And I didn't want to be comforted of, oh, sweetie, or, oh, you know what, Danielle, you're going to figure it. Like, I didn't want to be placated and I didn't want to be burdened. And there's a unique circle of people that you can turn to for that type of advice. But what I started to see, it's like following a breadcrumb trail because it's really subtle. It's the essence of something. I, what I loved most about teaching dance was helping somebody see something in themselves they didn't think was possible. I didn't think I could learn this. I didn't think my body could move this way. I didn't think I would ever be the type of person that could dance in front of other people. I loved moving alongside people. I loved the education component. And then even in the other jobs that I did before, I wanted and truly loved developing people. And that didn't directly mean therapy because that's not what a therapist does, but there was an emotional thread of all of the different things that I had done and what I actually loved about each. That it's like if you could form a word cloud, things started to get more clear and more pronounced. And I didn't know 100% going in that that would be therapy or working as a therapist. But once I decided that I wanted to go in as a therapist, then you just brought me back to a flood of memories. I didn't know which degree to get.
Mm.
I didn't know the difference between an LMS, there's so many different acronyms out there of people who are qualified to do what I do. And I didn't know if psychology, psychiatry, what would it mean to try to get a medical degree? Did I want to prescribe medication? So, what did I want to do with the degree? And funnily enough, I feel like I'm as close to accomplishing what I actually set out to do when I decided to commit to social work. Because what I liked about social work, because I'm an LCSW, so a licensed clinical social worker. Another guiding light, breadcrumb trail. When I found out Brene Brown was a social worker, I was like, hold the flippin' phone. This woman has been a North Star for me, and I didn't even know that she was the degree that I wanted to go to school for. I was like, okay, she's pretty cool. And if she can get that degree and she can do really cool things with it, because I think even within the social work program that there's a lot of times limited thinking or blinders. This is how it's been done and this is how it has to look. Like this is how philanthropy has to look. This is how nonprofits have to look. This is what leadership has to look like. And it all felt stale and boring because I knew I had a unique skill set. I was like, I'm a good communicator. I'm a clear communicator. I know that. And the other thing too that I've learned, and honestly, I think my children's book, Wrestling a Walrus, encapsulates it in a clearer way than I've ever known before. But my mission is to help people not feel afraid of their big feelings. And as best as I can, help them learn to look at their feelings and understand the information they're offering. Because emotions are energy in motion. And shrinking the gap between having a feeling and knowing what it's informing, that doing that for myself has what's changed my relationship with my emotions. And also it's changed anxiety. Like I have lived with anxiety and had moments of anxiety and depression throughout my entire adult life. And so that practice and that process is what I'm most passionate about. But I wanted to create scalability. So getting a social work degree, I knew even then that only working in a clinical practice wasn't going to be it. And so what I have found is that I will always be practicing therapy because I want to keep my knives sharp. I want to keep my skills valid and intact. And creating content, and in this case, my podcast, I want to create a conversation because people actually don't want to be told what to do. I've learned that 100 times over. People want to feel self-determined, and we're more interested in listening to a story than a script or a four-step process. Because let me tell you, if a four-step process could change your emotional landscape, then every book that exists on the self-help shelf would, we wouldn't have we
Yeah.
wouldn't have we wouldn't have the trouble.
I totally agree. When I hear you say that, it reminds me of what I was told at my last company, that people don't want to be sold, but people love to buy. And I think it's a powerful reframe. It's exactly what you're saying, and just like just from a different perspective. And I totally agree. I
Right.
mean, I can see this as a business
That
owner myself. If you tell someone to do, and you try to exert your own perspective on them, and this it won't work. They have to come to that conclusion on their own, and it's not that they don't want to, they actually want to, but they have to feel empowered to make that decision and to believe that they've arrived at it by themselves, even if you've guided them or provided boundaries. There's so much that you've said here that I can dive into, but one of the things that I would love to learn, or I would love for the moms listening to try to make sense of, is in so many ways, you ran a process on yourself that helped you arrive at what you should do next, that would help you feel this internal fulfillment, not this external fulfillment. You talked about understanding that. I think the way you said it is that you loved learning that you love to move alongside of people. Like that moving alongside of people was like a very important part of what filled you up. And you are so verbose and so articulate in knowing that like you should be using your words and the way that you articulate to your benefit to connect with people. So I'm just curious, and perhaps this goes too deep into kind of what you would share on in a session with a client, but how would you kind of framework or outline how someone else can arrive at this quote destination of what they should be doing versus maybe what they're doing today? Like, what are those steps
Mm.
that they can be taking that gets them closer to, again, that internal validation versus that external framework?
Sure. And this is a yes and both because external validation is incredibly healing. And I think it's the birthplace of true connection. Your best friend or the most loving relationship in your life. So feeling seen and heard by others and having that connection is absolutely nourishing, and I think in many ways necessary. So I don't want to minimize that. It's that what I had done is I had misplaced the value of me doing that for myself as well. And what that did is it put me in a position for a long time where I was unknowingly trying to get a hit off somebody else's supply to make me feel like I was enough. And that can be, we can put a lot of different names on that, but that can look like codependence, that can look like people pleasing, that can be like peacemaking as opposed to, or keeping the peace rather than making peace, right? Because making peace is revolutionary and keeping peace is placating. Or fawning, if we think about the trauma responses of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, I'm going to tell you and acquiesce whatever you need to hear to not ruffle feathers. And so I just more want to say that I am a champion of self-validation and self-actualization, but we are a social, we're a social species. And I mean, that's what I love about the community that you have built and are continuing to build because we need both. But I think we become reckless and emotionally dangerous if we also don't know how to do that for ourselves because another person can't give you all of it. So to answer your question of what would the process be, I would say it's really, and I think each of these answers has its own funnel of ways that it could look. But at first, I think has to start with awareness. And then we have to acknowledge, and then we have to take an action step. So awareness is that could look like mindfulness, that could look like journaling, that could look like therapy or coaching or having meaningful conversations with friends. But you have to be aware that the emotion exists. And I think that what often brings people or the clients that I work with to therapy is they have been holding on to an unnamed looming discomfort for so long, and they just don't know what it means, what to do with it. It's kind of like they're living inside the snow globe and it's shaken up. And so usually it's that feeling of, I just can't anymore. And we could call that burnout. We could call that depression. There might be different labels we could put on it, but sitting with and not ignoring, numbing, working through, avoiding all the different clever ways that we can opt out of feeling discomfort, but is increasing that awareness. And with that awareness, then we can move to the feelings then would need to be acknowledged. And that is terrifying to a lot of people. It's hard enough to get the insight. Oh, I may not be in a marriage I want to be in. Oh, this isn't the life path that I want to be on, but I've been so committed vocally for so many years. Oh, I think I'm depressed after my second baby. And I thought maybe I was just terrified that I didn't love my baby, but it's not that. But maybe so whatever the thing is, whatever the light bulb is, so you become aware. And I say in that place of going from being aware to acknowledging the thing, there's this equal part, almost instant relief, because when the truth is acknowledged, it opens and it expands. It's like you can take a deeper breath,
Mm.
but then almost immediately is met with it's this new type of terror. What do I do with
Mhm.
this? What does that mean? And in some way, the more clearly aware you are of something, the harder it is to ignore, which is what leads you to it being acknowledged.
Oh.
And sometimes the act of acknowledging it alone is the action step that is required. But oftentimes there are ripples, there are aftershocks of acknowledging the thing and saying the thing out loud. For me, I'll just use my story as an example. Like, oh, so I became aware I'll just go back to when my husband and we were broken up early in our dating relationship. In his absence, I became acutely aware how long how many gaps there were in my life. I don't actually love this job. I like it. I actually heard Mike Birbiglia, he's a stand-up comedian. I heard him say recently in a podcast, and I loved this line, that if you can, try to do what you love, not what you like. I realized that I liked dancing. I also liked how it sounded. I liked how it made me feel about myself in a shallow way. And I also don't judge myself for that because it served a great purpose. And I still love being able to dance, but I like it. I don't love it in the sense of I'm not really willing to sacrifice anything for it.
Right.
Like there are so many things that I love that are very inconvenient, but it's worth that inconvenience because I love the hell out of it, you know?
Well, and Danielle, I think one thing I wanna just chime in here is say, I think it's also normal and healthy for people to go through different life experiences. Like, you have to try things, and you have to like, part of life is maturing and looking back to say, "I didn't really love it. I thought I loved it. I liked it." This is, like, kind of the natural progression that we go on as humans.
Mhm.
It's maturity, it's context, it's like, it is okay to look back on your life and say, "Oh, maybe I didn't do things exactly the way I thought I would or should have," because that is what life is made up of, a whole bunch of experiences, some of which we're really proud of, some of which we aren't, some of which kind of fall in the middle, but they all kind of lead you towards what you kind of have, again, found in yourself. Like, you have to go through those things to get you to this place again, of, like, fulfillment, which is what I hear from you is, like, you can get to that place, but you almost have to go through the hard stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and
No one figures this out straight out of college. No one.
well, and similar to it's sort of like the more gentle way of saying, like, once I learned that I could pratfall in front of people and make a fool of myself and it wouldn't kill me. It's like when you continually face the thing you're most afraid of, which is either being rejected or being laughed at or making a mistake in front of people, you do that enough times, you're like, oh, okay, that's all that is. And then you can it for me, the confidence to try only came because I was on the other side of falling so many times.
Right.
It's like, "Oh, I have the confidence that I can get back up." And I refaced that. Actually, this is something that came about in when you were on my podcast just a week ago. I have every time I am meeting and introducing myself to a new form of technology, it's sort of like the burden of, "Okay, if you wanna put creative content out and you have to work with this technology," learning to put my podcast out on video, I have had to confront and face these old beliefs I carry about me and technology and what that means, and it sounds so trivial, but it's some it's like, "Oh, well, technology's hard, and I don't know how to do it, and I don't like reading instructions," and I'm like, "Okay, but if on the other side of this is the thing that you wanna make, what are you gonna do?"
That's right.
So I just
That's
get
right.
really sweaty and try.
Yeah, and be comfortable being uncomfortable, but then also removing that label from what again, you are what you believe you are. So if you say to yourself a million times, "I'm not a technologist, I'm not good at technology," well, guess what? It's gonna be really hard to be good at technology because you have to remove that barrier that we
Mhm.
we place in our minds. The other topic I wanna circle back to because I think I love the book, and I think, as you know, as moms, we are in this gentle parenting era where we talk about emotions a lot for our kids. And I think so often what's lost is the emotional regulation and awareness as as adults, as parents, as moms. Like we struggle to understand why we feel a certain way. We struggle to label it what it is that we're feeling day in and day out. And that absolutely plays a significant impact in how our children feel and how they will communicate with us. So I'd love for you to just kind of unpack and unravel that a little bit more because I think in my experience as a mom and through my own friendships and whether that be with again close friends or my sisters, we're willing to do anything and everything for our children. We know we want to use the latest and greatest parenting styles. We want to build sturdy foundations for our children. And in the process, I find that we are so quick to neglect or to not recognize that we haven't done that work ourselves.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
open-ended statement question for you.
Yes, I love an open-ended statement question. So, we cannot give what we do not have. So, and this is by no means a criticism. It is a truth wrapped in sweet, dark chocolate that if I want my child to know that her emotions aren't something to be avoided, if I want her to know that her feelings are also temporary, they come and go, if I want her to know that emotions are information, that doesn't mean we need to react to them right away. That is only something I can model for her if it's something I have access to. And so loving her by extension requires me to allow space for me to love myself in that same way. And if I think of it like ballroom dancing, for example, I know with complete, utter confidence and certainty, if you wanted to learn 3 salsa moves to go to a salsa club with your husband, I need 45 minutes. I can give you 3 moves. I know that. I know that because I've done that 1,000 times over. Even though I'm out of practice, I still know I could do it. Emotions are muddier and messier because we have so much programming and practice and fused neural pathways and biology and culture. We have so many things stacked against us when it comes to looking at ourselves, which is what, if there was actually one thing I would offer to anyone, like if like, what is one tangible takeaway? What's one simple thing I can do? Look in your own eyes in a mirror. This is called mirror work. It's an actual thing. Look in your own eyes in a mirror and hold your own eye contact. I'll say, if you want to start it, set a 3-minute timer, but I love to get people up to 10. Look into your own eyes. Just look into your own eyes. And if you can have access to this, what I would also invite you to think and or say is, I love you to yourself. Because what we do We go to our problem areas, we go to our flaws, we scan for food in our teeth. We're constantly scanning for problems. And that constant Terminator 2 scan for an issue is also, I think, how we move through life. And I'm saying we, including myself.
Sure.
I'm not so removed from that. I have led clients through this. I've done this myself. It almost always moves people to tears. And you realize how hard it is to look in your own eyes with love. The other thing, I have a photo of myself when I was 4. Oops, wait, sorry, it's a little blurry. There, now it's in focus. It's so easy to offer compassion and patience for our littles because we see them as little, but our brain actually develops from the inside out. So the layers grow on top. And the parts of us that have existed since we were 2 and 3 and 4, they still exist in us.
Mm.
The development of our limbic system, that's done about the age of 3. And most of us, when we are challenged, when we're confronted, and I don't mean triggered, that's a different thing, but when we're emotionally activated, we almost always revert back to an emotional age. And it's somewhere between 4 and 8.
Mm.
So looking into your own eyes and just looking in your own eyes, that can radically you won't, I don't even want to try to prescribe for people what can come up because sometimes it's incredible. Like it makes people angry.
Mhm.
You don't know what's going to come, but if you can sit in your own presence, I can promise you this, you will start to increase your tolerance and your capacity to sit with your children's discomfort too.
Danielle, that is a perfect place to end this conversation. I think it's so obvious to anyone listening why you are so qualified to do what you're doing, to be on this podcast as well. I mean, all the things that you're talking about, I think they're profound, but they're also simple. And I think that sometimes we get lost in all the noise and the complexity and all these different things. We're just constantly told and sold all the things we need to do, self-help, therapy, Sundays for yourself, all this stuff. It's noisy. It's hard. And the tips that you provided today, the word access, like these things are accessible to you every day, every week, every month. And like you said, like no one's perfect. But every once in a while, practicing these things, thinking about these things, making sure that you are in touch with yourself so that you could show up for you, for your husband, for your families, for your children, all the things. It's just so meaningful. And I'm so grateful for you sharing some of your wisdom here. And again, I so cherish just kind of how you've arrived at all of these things. Again, from ballroom dancer to a podcast host to a social worker, mom, friend. I mean, these things like it's a lot, but I think that you've done such a beautiful job today explaining kind of how you were able to arrive at all these things, how you're able to make space for all these things, not with perfection, but in fact, just kind of this constant lens of progressing. How can I be not better, but how can I make space for the things that fill me up and that allow me to show up? I mean, it's really, really beautiful. I'm telling you, it's quite inspiring. And as a mom, as a business leader, as someone that's doing all these things, it's something that I constantly face myself. It's that fear. Am I doing this for myself? When do I am I looking for validation? And it's noisy. And so I just want to say thank you. And I also want to give you an opportunity to share where can people find your books, find your podcasts, all the things. If you're like me that who met Danielle and said, I want more of this, where can people find you?
Thank you so much for that. So, to first answer your question, danielleireland.com. My podcast is linked there. All the books that I've published are linked there, but also the books. So, Wrestling a Walrus, my children's book, it's for ages 4 and up. You can also find that on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com. And my podcast is also on iTunes, Spotify, and recently on YouTube. And I just want to say, with that in mind, if people want to follow along, my all of my residual unhealed processed perfectionism is coming up with me in the last 6 weeks releasing my podcast on video. You can see in real time. Go look at how crappy my videos are that I'm posting online. Like they're not filling right, they're not spatially right. It's supposed to be vertical, not horizontal. You can actually see me in because I'm producing 3 weeks ahead of what's publishing. So I just saw what's released this week and I'm like, God damn it. It just, I didn't need to write that up at the top. I should have left that alone. My captions are messed up. Like I'm fumbling and failing forward in real time, and you
In
can
pu in the
follow.
public eye. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So you can see me fail and try to get a little bit better. You can follow that in real time if you want to. My handle on social media is also "Don't cut your own bangs." So yeah, so subscribe to my podcast. I talk about this. This is what I talk about every week, whether in an interview or a solo cast. And you can just watch me fall forward on social media because hopefully it will get better every week.
I love
But
it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Danielle, thank you so much. Hopefully more opportunities to collaborate, to partner, all the things. And so excited to continue to watch you shine. So thank you for being here today.